Today we will discuss what? About China. So here it is, China. You can see that China is the third largest country of the world. The first one is Russia, thereafter Canada, and the third one is China. And this is also the most populated country of the world. Geography I have already explained in the last video that what kind of geography of China is having. There are three major river systems. Can you name those three river systems? Like Hwanghe, Yangtze and Yellow River. So these are the three rivers which are available in China, which irrigate the land of China. So here we will discuss something more about the political history of China, that what kind of political changes took place in China with the passage of time and how it became a modern country, that we are going to discuss. What is the party system in China and what is the present situation of China in the world, that we are going to discuss here. So first of all we will go to the historic background of China. You can see that the modern history of China centered around the three questions. So there were three basic questions in front of the China. First of all, how to regain sovereignty. Means China was colonized by other powers like Japan and Britain. So how it can get the independence and it can become a sovereign state. That was the first question in front of the China. Second question was that how to end the humiliation of foreign occupation, because Chinese territories were under the foreign occupation, under the control of the foreign powers. So how to get freedom, that was the second question in front of the Chinese. Like India was also a colony, the same way China was also colonized. Many parts of China was conquered by the Japan and other powers of the world. How to bring equality and development in China. So there was a lot of gap between the rich and poor. How to bring the equality and how to make China a developed country, that was the question in front of the Chinese people. So to solve these problems there were three views of different leaders, and these three views we will discuss here. First of all, the early reformers such as Kang Yuai or Liang Qichao tried to use traditional ideas in new and different ways to meet the challenges posed by the West. Western power became very powerful at that time. India was also a colony at that time, and the Qing dynasty was ruling China. So these people were there at that time. These were the Qing reformer. Qing was a dynasty which was ruling in China. So they wanted that reformation should be done with the present government system and it should be modernized. So these were the two reformers, Kang Yuai and Liang Qichao. Then Republican Revolution was brought by Sun Yatsen, the first president of the Republic, were inspired by the ideas from Japan and the West. He is also known as the father of the modernization of China, Sun Yat-sen. He was a Republican. He got education in Japan and some other countries, and he was influenced by the Western ideas. So he wanted to implement the Westernization in China, and he wanted to make China modern with the Western sciences and ideas. So that was Sun Yat-sen. The third is the Communist Party of China, which is still a ruling party in China, wanted to end age-old inequalities and drive out the foreigners. So present president of China is Xi Jinping, and he is from which party? CCP, Communist Party of China. So this party also was working to make China a modernized country, and its way was quite different from the other two thinkers, Kang Yuai, Sun Yat-sen. उनसे ये थोड़ी अलग थी. That was the CCP. So confrontation with the West. How China confronted with the Western power, that we are going to study over here. So you can see that ships and boats are shown over here. It symbolizes the trade of China with the Western power, especially the trading link was with the Britain, and Britain was having a colony in this side in India. The first encounter with the West in the 16th and 17th century, when Jesuit missionaries introduced Western sciences such as astronomy and mathematics. Jesuit missionaries are those missionaries which are having an aim to spread Christianity in the world. So they went to the China and they started spreading the modern sciences like astronomy and mathematics in China. Then in the 19th century, when Britain used force to expand its lucrative trade in the opium, leading to the first Opium War, which was fought between 1839 to 42. There were two Opium Wars which was fought between the Britain and the China. So at that time India was the colony of Britain, and opium used to be grown in India and it was sent to China. Because British used to take a number of items from the China, there was trading link between the Britain and the China, and mainly the trade was of the tea and some other products. As a result, the trade balance was in the favor of China because export from China was more and import from Britain was less. So Britain was in the loss. As a result, Britain wanted to find out the ways how their loss could be averted, and they wanted to create demand of a particular thing in the China so that trade balance can be in the favor of the Britain. So they introduced one thing in the China, and that was the opium, which was grown in India and it was exported to the China. As a result, the Chinese became addicted to the opium and the demand of the opium was increased, and they used to take silver coins or gold coins in lieu of the opium which was supplied to the Chinese. As a result, a lot of gold was taken by the Britain from China, and later on this gold was used by the British to purchase the tea from China which was required in the Britain. So it was a triangular trade, and as a result the Chinese started feeling that now we are in the loss because of the British policies and our people are becoming addicted. So they wanted to confront with the British, and there were two wars between the Britain and the China, and these are known as the Opium Wars. And in these Opium War, China got a defeat at the hand of the British, and mainly the British soldiers were the Indians at that time, because Indians were sent to fight against the Chinese and these were sent by the British people. So you can see that how the trade used to take place between Britain and the China. You can see that this is India. Mainly opium used to be grown over here, and it used to be sent through the different ports to the China, mainly from the Calcutta, and it was sent to the China in the Canton region, from where the British used to purchase rices and the tea, and as a result there was Opium War. You may know that there were many Indian entrepreneurs at that time who became quite rich because of this opium trade. Mainly these were the Tata, these were the Birla, Dwarkanath Tagore. These traders of India also became quite rich because of the opium trade with the China. As a result, Chinese economy was shattered because of the loss in the trade with the Britain, and finally they confronted with the Britain, and there were two Opium Wars in which China got a defeat. Now we will discuss the reforms which were initiated by the two people, Kang Yuai and Liang Qichao, to strengthen the system, and initiated policies to build a modern administrative system, a new army and an educational system, and set up local assemblies to establish constitutional government. So these were the two people, Kang Yuai and Liang Qichao. They worked for making a constitutional government in the China, and these were the king reformers. At the time of King dynasty they started these reforms. They saw the need to protect China from the colonization, because the news of colonizing different countries in the world was spread in China, especially the news of colonization of India reached to China. As a result, these reformers wanted that China should be avoided to be colonized by the British and some other European powers. So they initiated the reform in China. First of all, resistance to the West. This is Liang Qichao. The partition of Poland in the 18th century was a much discussed example. Poland was divided, and they used to have a term in their country that was Bolan was, means to Poland us, like our fate will also be like the Poland, and China would also be divided. So first of all, Liang Qichao wanted that the Chinese people should believe that China is a nation which should not be divided at all. India was a country that was destroyed by a known country, that is the East India Company, wrote Liang Qichao, and criticized the Indians for being cruel to their own people and subservient to the British. So he also spread the news of India which was colonized by a known country, because in India East India Company came here and they colonized the India. So he criticized the India that a private company has colonized the India, and the people of India was also cooperating with that company. So they were subservient to that company, and the Indian people were also used against the China in the Opium War. As a result, this appeal was reached to the common man, and they also started believing that we would also be colonized like the India, and they started criticizing the India. Now, development of Confucianism. Confucius used to be religious leader of China. This was also the beginning of the old religion of China. Confucianism was the old religion of China. Then they reached Buddhism from India. The teaching of Confucius and his disciple was concerned with good conduct, practical wisdom, and proper social relationship was adopted. So Confucianism was full of idealism. Chinese attitude towards life provided social standards and laid the basis for political theories and institutions in China. It was now seen as a major barrier to the new ideas and institutions. So earlier the Chinese life was much influenced by the ideas of Confucianism, which used to have more emphasis on the idealism. But now Chinese people started thinking that if we will be believing in the idealism of Confucius, then the China would remain the backward. So they wanted to leave these kind of the philosophy, and they thought that it is a major barrier in the development of China. There was educational reform. So what kind of educational reform was done, that we will discuss here. To train people in modern subjects, students were sent to study in Japan, Britain and France and bring back new ideas. Many Chinese students went to Japan in the 90s. They not only brought back new ideas, but many became leading Republicans. So as we know that we have discussed in the last class also, that Japan became a modern country and it was also developed like the Western countries. So China also wanted to modernize its economy. As a result, they sent their children to the Japan so that they can bring back modern ideas, modern sciences, but at the same time they also brought back the philosophy of the politics, and many of them became the Republican, and they returned to the China and they wanted to make China a republic country. The Chinese borrowed even Japanese translation of European words such as justice, rights, revolution, because they used the same ideographic script as reversal of the traditional relationship. So traditionally Japanese borrowed their culture from China, but now was the time when China was adopting the Japanese culture. Many Japanese translation of words which were coming from the European side, they were adopted by the Chinese people. In the past, the culture disseminated from China to Japan, but now the culture was disseminated by from Japan to China. In 1905, just after the Russo-Japanese War, which was fought on the Chinese soil and over Chinese territory, the centuries-old Chinese examination system that gave candidates entry into the elite ruling class was abolished. So China used to conduct a test which was conducted nationwide, and only 1 or 2% people used to pass that test, and with the help of that test they used to get the government job. And these 1 to 2% who used to pass, they were called as the beautiful talent. So the system was quite rigid, and a very less number of people used to pass that. So that was considered to be a barrier in the development. So that examination system was abolished by the Chinese after the Russo-Japanese War, in which the war was fought on the Chinese soil and China was in the loss, though the war was fought between the Russia and the Japan, in which Russia got a defeat. So after Liang Qichao and Kang Youai, there was another reformer which came into the politics, and it was Sun Yatsen, which was considered as the father of the modern China. So this is the image of Sun Yat-sen, and he was the first president of China. The Manchu Empire was overthrown and a republic established in 1911 under Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who is regarded as the founder of the modern China. Dr. Sun Yat-sen, he came from poor family and studied in missionary schools, where he was attracted to democracy, Christianity, and studied medicine, but was a great concern about the fate of China. So we can see that Sun Yat-sen, who was the first Chinese president, he was studied in a convent school. So he was influenced by the Western ideas, and he wanted to make China a country which is westernized. So he implemented those ideas which he borrowed from the Western culture. He wanted to bring modern sciences in the China, and he wanted to do the modernization of China. This is another image of Sun Yat-sen. His program was called the Three Principles, and these are known by the name San Min Chui. The first principle is that nationalism, overthrowing the Manchus. So Manchu Empire used to be there in China, and Manchu Empire was considered to be a foreign. They were considered to be the foreigners. So Dr. Sun Yat-sen wanted to overthrow that empire, and he wanted to create the feeling of nationalism among the people of China. The second principle is that democracy, establishing a democratic government. He wanted to set up a democracy in China, and he wanted to set up the democratic government in China. Then socialist, regulating capital and equalizing land holding. There used to be land holding in the hand of some people. There were warlords, so he also started a battle against the warlords, and he wanted to distribute the land equally among the Chinese people. So these reforms, and these were the three principles of Dr. Sun Yat-sen's politics in China. How he established a republic, that we will discuss. The social political situation continued to be unstable. There was chaos-like situation in China. On 4th May 1919, an angry demonstration was held in Beijing to protest against the decision of the post-war peace conference. It galvanized a whole generation to attack tradition and to call for saving China through modern sciences, democracy, and nationalism. As we know that the First World War continued from 1914 to 1918. And in 1919 there was a peace conference which was held in the Paris, that is called as the Paris Peace Conference, in which the occupied land by different power were returned to their countries. But the China's land, which was controlled by the Japanese, that was not ceded. It was not made free. As a result, the Chinese people were angry on the peace conference which was held in Paris. So they also demonstrated. There was an angry demonstration in China on 4th May 1919, and this is called as the 4th May movement. Revolutionaries were asked for driving out the foreigners to control natural resources and remove inequalities and reduce poverty. China was a very poor country at that time because the resources were controlled by the foreign powers. So through this republican movement, the ideas came forward, and now Chinese started believing that the foreigners should be ousted from the China. The resources which are controlled by them, they should be made freed from their control, so that the China could also be modernized. Revolutionaries advocated reform, use of simple language, abolish foot binding and female subordination, equality in marriage, and economic development. So these ideas were influenced by the ideology of Sun Yat-sen, and they wanted that these evils which were spread in the Chinese society, that should be stopped. We should use the simple language. We should not exploit the people by binding their foot. We should not make the women subordinate. They should be also given the equality. So these ideas were spread by these republican leaders in the China, and that was the beginning of modernization of China. Sun Yat-sen's idea based on the four great needs. So Sun Yat-sen considered that these are the four great needs of Chinese. First is clothing, second is the food, and the third is housing, and fourth is the transportation. So more emphasis were laid down to provide the Chinese these basic needs, which was considered important by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who was also a republican. Dr. Sun Yat-sen also founded a party, and that party is called as the Guandang Party. So establishing the republic, and this is the symbol of that party, that is the Guandang Party, and this is the flag of CCP. Communist Party of China, which is still a ruling party in China. After the Republican Revolution, the country entered a period of turmoil. So there was chaos all around in the country after this revolution, which was there on 4th May 1919. So after that there was a huge chaos in the country. Turmoil like situation was there. The Guomindang, which was a party founded by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, it is also known as the National People's Party, and the CCP emerged as the major forces striving to unite the country and bring stability. So these two parties worked together to bring the stability in the China. But later on, this party was suppressed by the Guomindang. The only dominant party in China was Guomindang Party, because CCP was suppressed by the Guomindang Party after that revolution, and Guomindang became the most powerful party of China. So we will read about the Guomindang. Sun Yat-sen's ideas became the basis of the political philosophy of the Guomindang Party. They identified the four great needs as clothing, food, housing and transportation, and these were the great needs considered by the Dr. Sun Yat-sen also. So the Guomindang Party was highly influenced from the ideas of Dr. Sun Yat-sen. After the death of Sun, Chiang Kai-shek emerged as the leader of the Guomindang, and as he launched a military campaign to control the warlords, regional leaders who had usurped authority, and to eliminate the communists. So he was the second leader after Dr. Sun Yat-sen, and he also became the president of China, and his name is Chiang Kai-shek. He started a military campaign against the warlords who were controlling the majority of land of China, and that was redistributed among the people. And he also wanted to end the age-old inequalities, though he could not be successful. He also started a war against the regional leaders who became rebellious against him. So he introduced a military campaign throughout the China, and he implemented a military order in China. He advocated a secular and rational this worldly Confucianism. So he was also a follower of Confucius, but he wanted to amend that old Confucius, and he wanted to modernize it, but also sought to militarize the nation. He wanted to make his army stronger so that China could be avoided from colonization. They can combat the Western power. The people must develop a habit and instinct for unified behavior. This was his philosophy. He encouraged women to cultivate the four virtues, and these four virtues: chastity, appearance, speech and work, and to recognize their role as confined to the household. So he was not in the favor to give more right to the women. He wanted that women should confine themselves to the household chores only. They should not come into the public role. Even the length of the hemline, which was generally worn by the women of China, that was also prescribed by the Chiang Kai-shek. So we think that Chiang Kai-shek wanted to establish a military rule in China, which was influenced by his ideas. So many Chinese turned against the Chiang Kai-shek. The Guomindang's social base was in the urban areas. That was also a limitation of Guomindang, that it could not win the support of the rural people. Industrial growth was very slow and it was very limited. Increase in the industrial working class, but maximum employment in the small sector industries. So there was some sort of modernization, but still the maximum workers who were engaged in the secondary sector, they were engaged only in the small workshop and small factories. So large factories were missing from the Chinese land. Most were petty urbanites, that is known as the Shaoshimin, traders and shopkeepers. Urban workers, particularly women, earned a very low wages. So the per capita income of China was very low. So there was no large scale industries, per capita income was low, and this party could not win the support of the rural people because it was very weak in the rural areas. So these were the limitation of Kuomintang. Working hours were also very long and condition of work was also very bad. As a result, the workers also turned against the Kuomintang party. As individualism increased, there was a growing concern with the women's right, ways to build a family and discussion on the love and the romance. So there were many voices in the society at that time that women should also be given the right. So they should be given the civil liberties and there should not be military order in the country. As a result, the Kuomintang party lose support from the Chinese people. Now what social and cultural change took place at that time? Social and cultural changes was helped along by the spread of school and universities. Peking universities was set up in 1902. So modern schooling was also started in China during the time of Kuomintang. Journalism flourished at the same time and the popular life of weekly edited by Zhao Taofen. This is Zhao Taofen, who was a reporter from China and he was the editor of the magazine Life's Weekly, and he used to publish the ideology of the world leaders like the Mahatma Gandhi, Kemal Atatürk used to be the modernist leader of Turkey. So these ideas were also spread by these magazines and newspapers. As a result, the Chinese became aware about what is going in the world. And its circulation, the circulation of the magazine which was published by Zhao Taofen increased from 2000 to the 20,000 in a very short period of time. So Chinese started taking interest in the happening of the world and they came to know about the ideology of different leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. What were the causes of the decline of Kuomintang and why Kuomintang declined and CCP emerged as the major party of China and it is still ruling the China? Its narrow social base and limited political vision. As we discussed that its base was mainly in the urban areas, so rural areas were not in the support of the Kuomintang. As a result, it became declined. Thereafter, a major plank in Sun Yat-sen's program regulating capital and equalizing land. Sun Yat-sen wanted that age-old inequalities in the China which was prevailing, that must be ended, but that could not be done by this party. So the philosophy which was providing the base to the Kuomintang, that was forgotten after that. Carried out because the party ignored the peasantry. Party ignored the peasantry because they were mainly pro-urban and they were focusing on the urban areas only. And the rising social inequalities, and because of this peasantry became very poor and there was a lot of inequalities in the China. But the philosophy of Sun Yat-sen was to remove the inequality which was not carried out by this party. It sought to impose military order. As we discussed that Chiang Kai-shek was also a military leader and he wanted to impose the military order instead of the democracy. As a result, people turned against this party and this party lost its ground in the Chinese people. When the Japanese invaded China in 1937, the Kuomintang retreated. It was not able to fight against the Japanese invasion. So that was a major failure of the Kuomintang party. As a result, China got a defeat. The long and exhausting war weakened China. China became very weak. Economy of China declined because of the war with the Japan. Prices also rose during that war time from up to the 30%, and these were the prices of daily commodities, and between 1945 to 49 these prices used to be very high and utterly destroyed the lives of the common people. So the common man's life was very miserable during this time. Rural China faced two crises at the same time. One was the ecological crisis and second was the soil exhaustion and deforestation and floods. As a result, the agricultural production of China was also declined. And the second, a socio-economic one caused by exploitative land tenure system, indebtedness, primitive technology and poor communication. So these things were also not addressed by this party. As a result, the rural economy of China got shattered at that time. So the Guandang Party became very weak after that Japanese invasion on China, and finally CCP overthrown the Guandang Party and it took hold of China in 1949. And who was the leader of CCP? That was Mao Zedong, and we will discuss about the CCP in the next lecture.